Hey everyone, welcome back to Fit's Health Conscious Corner, episode 14. And we are talking about raising emotional IQ. So back from a little hiatus, I just want to say thank you to everyone that joined in at our Misfit Club 3rd annual support raiser. And all of your support, your contributions, it all makes such a big difference. So thank you so much. Tonight we are talking about emotional intelligence. We're talking about emotional awareness, emotional management, and regulation. So I'll just give a few moments for everybody to log in. Feel free to tell me where you are and tell me how you're feeling. Happy Wednesday to all of you. Thanks so much for joining in. So we are going to jump right in and we are going to talk about what emotional intelligence is. And we're going to talk about ways that we can enhance emotional IQ. And we're also going to talk about ways that we stunt our emotional awareness and growth. So tonight, feel free. Maybe it's an evening wherever you're joining from. Maybe it's morning. Maybe it's the next day. But we're here. So feel free to drop in the chat at any time, any comments, any feedback, any questions that you have related to emotional well-being and just find ways to manage or any difficulties and struggles that you might be having lately. So can anybody relate to maybe saying something out of anger or acting out of anger, maybe projecting on somebody with high emotion, high intensity emotions, and maybe the person has nothing to do with the situation, or it's just totally irrelevant to them, but we're projecting emotions and anger, frustrations, or irritability out on somebody else. Anybody relate to that? What about maybe emotional suppressing? So just experiencing emotions and then consciously blocking yourself from feeling those emotions. It might even look like ignoring those emotions, or so not acknowledging that you are feeling, a certain emotion. Maybe it's sadness, anger, grief, frustration, whatever it is. Maybe has anyone experienced high intensity emotions that might have maybe led to some violence or breaking things or harming somebody else, or maybe emotional situations where instead of dealing with the emotions and processing it in a healthy way, turning to substances to numb emotions. Maybe that's something we can all relate to somewhere there, just, feeling emotions that we're not able to control or to deal with. So this is all relevant to emotional dysregulation, and it's all relevant to emotional awareness. So what I want to talk to you today is about emotional IQ. So you might have heard the term IQ. It means intelligent quotient. And what it is, it's a standard of measuring intelligence based on standardized testing. And today what I want to talk about and just reframe that is talking about emotional intelligence and weighing in on measuring our ability to become more emotionally aware. So I hope that you are all excited and ready to dive into this, because this is something that I'm super passionate about. Why? Because just going through many life adversities, and struggles, just medically, personally, and being in a survival mode a lot of the time. I was very prone to emotional blocking and numbness and not acknowledging feelings that I was going through or even currently, right? So I find that emotional management, it's an everyday thing. And, just going through these situations and not understanding ways to regulate, to manage and acknowledge, it did lead me down some paths where, I was blocking those emotions, or I was, in unhealthy situations and not knowing how to manage it, and, letting emotions spiral out. So becoming more reactive rather than responsive. So that's what I want to kind of expand on today. So again, feel free, put it in the chat. Tell me, how you're feeling, any comments, questions, anything that you want me to speak on today, put it in the chat. So what is emotional intelligence? It is the ability to understand your own emotions, and it's also the ability to understand others' emotions, especially when it comes to, situations where where natural emotions would be present, whether it's anger, happiness, sadness, any emotion, right? So just having that awareness and understanding that you are experiencing emotions, what they are, and the ability to understand that of others. So that is what the foundation of what emotional intelligence is. Now, how do we do this? So creating emotional intelligence it starts with self-awareness. So self-awareness is the ability to recognize and understand your emotions. The intelligence aspect is the ability to use the knowledge, the awareness, and to start to practice skills that help you to manage those emotions, that help you to regulate it. So what is emotional management? It's that ability to understand emotions and then to regulate them so that the responses are promoting positive emotional well-being and positive, healthy emotional processing. To be able to respond to situations rather than react to them. There's a difference between responding and reacting. A lot of the times when we're emotionally dysregulated, we are acting out of reaction, high emotions. Usually, a lot of the time, there isn't any time to pause and to think about the situation with that kind of outside in perspective. When we're responding, we're able to think about the situation, think about the relevant emotions that might come with it, learn to understand how we feel about it, accepting it, acknowledging it, and then responding from that place. When in that time, often when we're responding, the effect and the kind of like the smoke off of the fire of emotion has cooled down. So when that happens, more clarity is available. We're able to see things a little bit more clearly. So what are ways that we might recognize where we're not practicing emotional management or regulation or emotional intelligence or self-awareness? So sometimes that might be emotional dumping. So sometimes we are going through high emotions and we are having conversations or attempting to have a conversation with somebody else, not recognizing where they're at emotionally and recognizing what their needs are, their capacity is to receive that information. So sometimes we're emotionally dumping and we're not having any reservations about and awareness about the person that we are venting or emotionally just releasing everything onto them. So what, and a way to kind of help that and to manage that is even just asking, whoever it is that you're speaking to, if they have the time or energy or capacity to allow you to explore your thoughts and your frustrations and your feelings. So that's a way that we can manage emotions, and when it comes to other people as well, and having that emotional intelligence to recognize where others are at emotionally, not just ourselves. Blurred emotions. So sometimes that can happen when, there is substances in the system, whether it is alcohol or other substances, at times that it can increase emotions. And sometimes when emotions are increased, thoughts are irrational. There's blurred lines. So the likelihood for misinterpreting or, choosing to selectively hear, that kind of thing, and just kind of missing the whole picture, or having emotions all over the place, and it's this high and low, and it's controlled by whether it's a substance or whether it's just controlled by high emotions taking over and negative thought consumption, and that's leading to this blurred perception that there's anything else possible outside of what we're seeing in that moment. Projection. So emotional projection. You might notice, what is projection? Projection means that for example, you might be taking out your emotions or your feelings of, maybe it's insecurity, it's doubts, it's fears, maybe it's the inability to process some emotions or have the emotional intelligence, and projecting those fears onto others, and assuming that the way you're feeling and processing things is the way that another person is feeling or processing. And in those cases, we're creating a lot of barriers in those relationships, because we're imposing our own thoughts and feels on somebody else. And a lot of that time, in those times, it can create gaps and barriers, and just being inauthentic, right? Because we're just not being true to ourselves, and trying to control somebody else by projecting on them, or leading to another point, emotional manipulation, using your emotions to control somebody else. And I am going to go into another episode and break down emotional manipulation and, ways to recognize that, what that is. That will be in a whole other episode. But just touching on that briefly, right, is just using emotions to control other people. Having emotional intelligence, we want to use that to promote positive well-being, authentic relationships, bridge gaps, rather than using knowledge of emotion to distort, to manipulate, to control. So, there are different ways to understand emotions, and we want to make sure here in Fitz Health Conscious Corner that we're using the knowledge to apply it to be able to create that emotional intelligence, that self-awareness of how you're feeling, feelings of others, to create better relationships, health conscious ways of living, rather than using it for ways that create negative circumstances, relationships, or situations that are not highly favored. Feel free to drop in the chat what your thoughts and feels are on some of these ways that we these terms, these emotional intelligence, these terms that surround emotional awareness and intelligence, and positive ways or negative ways. So we are going to jump into what are ways or things that we can do to create more emotional awareness and intelligence. And feel free again to drop in the chat some ways that you're practicing emotional intelligence and awareness in your life. Sometimes exploring our own emotions, it can be very scary. Sometimes when you're exploring emotions, how are we creating this awareness? One is recognizing, your thoughts and feelings, becoming an observer of those thoughts and feels, and observing your emotional responses or reactions to what you're feeling, and noticing your behaviors that are attached to it. Are these, when you're feeling high negative emotions, what are your behaviors? Are you turning to vices, escapism, those outlets, or are you taking the measures needed to be able to grow your own emotional awareness and your own emotional capacity to endure, to accept, to also, these there can be these situations that happen in life, and learning to create more self-awareness and raise emotional IQ comes from learning how to cope with emotional changes and experiences, and anticipating them as well. So, there are different ways that we go through trials and tribulations, and that might be work or school or friendships or partnerships, relationships, and we are human, so we are going to go through an array of emotions and feelings and circumstances and experiences, and that's going to come with changes in emotions. So learning to anticipate that and learning about emotions and understanding it helps us to be able to experience and go through those emotions, that array of emotions in ourselves, and accept it as natural and as human, rather than suppressing, compartmentalizing, blocking everything. When you're compartmentalizing, you're separating the thought from the feeling, and again, creating that gap. When we're suppressing, often that time you might feel like you're in survival mode. So it's that fight and flight. It's the reactiveness rather than that responsiveness. And so another way, really, it comes, the foundation of emotional awareness comes from acknowledging what you're feeling, accepting that you're feeling those emotions, taking moments to, rather than critique it and frame it in a way that it has to be, just accept it for the way that it's showing up to you, without judgment, without criticizing, without boxing yourself in. So, I come also from a CBT background, so cognitive behavioral therapy, practicing some of those models and learning about them, and then using some of those models and principles in some of my coaching programs. But in order for me to have, to understand that, I had to go through a lot of that myself. I had to go through learning about ways to be able to emotionally regulate and manage. And a lot of the time it came from self-observation, meditation, taking moments to breathe in high intensity circumstances, emotional circumstances, learning to take that step back and emotionally reevaluate and challenge the accuracy of thoughts related to feelings, because often what we're feeling isn't actually the not to say that it's not truth. It does. Your feelings are feelings, but they're also not facts. So the way you feel in a moment might not be the same, fact that you accept your truth on in that moment of high emotions and anger. And when you're out of that state, you might have a different realization or a different position when you're out of those high intensity emotions. So, another way also I would say is learning to practice empathy. When you're able to understand, or at least try to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and see their perspective, you're also able to practice empathy. And that's truly what it means to feel what somebody else might be feeling to the best of your ability, and be able to understand some natural emotions that might be related to those circumstances. When we're able to practice empathy, there's less judgment, more compassion. You take the time in between to be able to consider the perspective of others. And it's very important when we're talking about building your own awareness, but also building your own awareness of others. It's very important to practice that skill of empathy. Empathy is practiced, right? So practicing empathy, it's a pretty big deal, and it's really helpful to all aspects of life and understanding life. That this journey that we're all on, just trying to understand life to the best of our abilities based on our experiences, our beliefs, many contributing factors. So again, feel free, put it in the chat. Tell me any ways that you that helps you to emotionally regulate, manage, to observe your own thoughts and feels, to accept them, coping strategies. So yeah, just kind of touching back on CBT. So, the CBT model is, what it means is to be aware and pay direct attention to your emotions, to your thoughts, to make those connections with your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors. And then it also encourages, helping to label those emotions so that you have better understanding. Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it joy? Is it grief? Is it loss? Is it frustration? Is it anxiousness? What is the emotion that you're feeling? Putting a label to it, just that emotion, a name to it, helps us to be able to grow more understanding. Also just creating more positive outlooks. Any questions? Any thoughts? So why is this all important? We'll just move on and start to wrap it up. So why is this all important, everyone? If we can have more emotional management, we can have more connection to truth, more connection to, managing the highs and lows of emotion, to feel more emotionally aware, to have stronger relationships. Sometimes when there's mismanaged and dysregulated emotions, out of control emotions, it can lead to some really negative circumstances. And in some cases in relationships, it can lead to a domestic circumstance. It could lead to, criminal charges, in just everyday life, maybe breaking things, vandalizing, again, criminal charges, restitution, paying back damages, or, making decisions that you wouldn't make, negative, choosing to do, things, maybe it's like, a decision that you would rationally make. And when you're in that angry or high emotional rage or state and not thinking, there's some things that you might do and that you wouldn't do if you were more emotionally managed, regulated, or aware. So, again, it helps with healthy decision making, to be more emotionally aware, so that the decisions that you're making, the outcomes, that they have more of a positive impact on your emotional well-being rather than negative impacts. So again, it can be scary to dive in and become more emotionally aware. It can involve going through layers of yourself, layers of thoughts, layers of feelings, beliefs. Sometimes it can also go as far back to examining the way that you respond and process emotions, or process anger and heavy feelings. And a lot of the time there's learned behaviors. So, we've learned how to respond based on, others' behaviors, whether it's siblings, parents, friends, TV shows, things we've seen in movies. We do attach ourselves to beliefs and thoughts and responses, reactions, and the ways that we think that others are dealing with it and thinking it's the way that it's a healthy way to deal with it. And I mean, some ways that others do deal with it are positive and great examples, but then there's other ways that you will be able to recognize because they're giving you negative outcomes. Your emotions all over the place. It's a roller coaster. You know, those type of circumstances and situations are stunting your emotional growth. So it all comes back to building that foundation and practice of practicing becoming aware of your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts, and practicing understanding them, practicing those outlets to help manage them. So, you know, maybe it's taking that step back, maybe it's meditation, maybe it is reading, maybe it's writing, maybe it's singing, maybe it's dancing, maybe it's crying. Maybe it is a loud scream into the pillow. There's many different ways. I'm just going to look in the chat here. Thanks so much. It's so easy to push emotions down. We need to feel the feels. Absolutely, Tracy. Thank you for that feedback. It is so easy to suppress and to invalidate emotions, and you know, sometimes even just saying like, I don't have time to feel these emotions. I don't have time to be upset. I don't have the energy for it, or I don't have the time to, you know, just want to go there. And sometimes we're thinking of all the other ways that we can just stack things on top. But what happens when we're suppressing? We eventually have that boiling point and everything just spills out. And often that's, you know, unregulated emotions, right? So we want to make sure that we're acknowledging how we feel. It's part of coping. We want to make sure that we are nurturing our own self-care and that responsibility to ourselves to be able to handle ourselves with emotional care and compassion. So, you know, that empathy for yourself, what you're going through, but empathizing also in a way that helps you to understand what others might be going through as well. And again, having this emotional awareness and insight and practicing this, it helps you to have improved relationships, helps you to, you know, relate to the world in a healthier way. And it also helps you to grow in character, right? Emotional maturity also comes with this too. So many positives, so many ways that we can really be able to get more of a handle on what we feel, acknowledge it, and allow ourselves to be human. That's a big point of everything. So any more thoughts? Thank you so much for the love. Thank you so much for chiming in with your thoughts, your feels. Thank you for listening in today. The replays will be available on our YouTube channel, Fitz Health Conscious Corner. So you can always send in DMs right through Instagram DM. You can also send it in through email at fitzhealthconsciouscorner@gmail.com. And we're here every Wednesday night. And I just want to continue to keep giving you all of the best support that I can and insights, share with you experiences to help you grow in your own life and health conscious living and to promote your well-being. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Sending out so much love to all of you. I will see you next week. If there's anything, just put it in the chat. Awesome. Thank you all so much. Happy Wednesday. We will see you next week. Lots of love and light from the Fitz Health Conscious Corner. Peace out, everyone.